Hi, and welcome to Exceptional History. Before we get into it, please hit like, share, and especially subscribe. We'd really appreciate that, as that is what keeps our channel growing and going. Now, let's get into it. What would you do if your ethnicity suddenly became illegal? On top of that, what if everyone you knew suddenly vanished from your life? Pretty daunting questions, right? Well, these were all questions a 10-year-old Jewish boy abandoned in the Third Reich had to answer. Today, sit back, relax, and join us for some exceptional history. Henrik Whiteshirt was a blond, blue-eyed, fair-skinned Jewish boy, an unusual combination that still slotted him into the category of Hitler's Aryan race. For this reason, when Hitler's Nazi war machine rolled through Poland, Henrik found himself in an orphanage, watching his mother leave him behind. Seeing the signs of their demise as the Nazis swarmed Poland in 1939, Henrik's family decided to place him in a Polish orphanage with the strict instructions that he must never reveal his Jewish heritage. Because of his Aryan look, he would be able to hide among what the Germans believed was the superior race. But before Henrik's mother left him at the orphanage, she gave him these final words that marked the end of his childhood. "My son, you must learn to be strong. From now on, you are no longer my child. Now you are a man." And with that final goodbye, Henrik's mother, his father, and the rest of his siblings were erased from his life forever. He was now a ward of the Nazi government. As a ward of the state, Henrik was plunged into Nazi political indoctrination. Anti-Semitic songs, dedication to the Führer, the German language, and a rabid desire to fight for the fatherland were all part of his education. After a year, he and other Nazi-trained orphans were taken by train to Germany, where the Third Reich was shown off to them. When the trip ended in Berlin, all the boys were herded off and categorized by size. The larger boys were sent into the army, while the younger boys, which included Henrik, were sent back to Poland. Because of Henrik's Nazi brainwashing, it was a great disappointment to him at the time, but also the singular thing that kept him from being sent to fight in the war. Once Henrik returned to Poland, he did not return to the orphanage. Instead, he returned to his old neighborhood where he hoped to see his parents. He was both shocked and confused when he found people he did not know living in his home. He was turned away, but on the street he recognized one of his neighbors. The neighbor, apparently nervous and apprehensive at his presence, tried to turn him away, but he refused to leave until he pulled out the information that all the Jews in the neighborhood had been taken to the Warsaw Ghetto, and it was now dangerous to even speak to a Jew. With this news, Henrik made his way to the Warsaw Ghetto, home of one of Nazi Germany's most horrible atrocities. At the ghetto, Henrik found that it was not that difficult to get in. The Nazis were starving the Jews within the ghetto, so it was very profitable for young Polish boys to smuggle in food through the sewers. Henrik became one of these boy smugglers who slowed and soothed the death throes of the Warsaw Ghetto Jews. Once in the ghetto, he saw the horrors of children starving, disease running rampant, and Jews being killed indiscriminately, along with the child food smugglers who were sometimes unlucky enough to get caught by the Germans. Later in his life, Henrik recalled that in the ghetto, he would sometimes hear a Jew beg in fervent prayer for the Messiah to come. However, Henrik was not there to find a Messiah, he was there to find his family. which he did not. Starvation soon drove him from the ghetto and into the Polish countryside. Here, as his mother predicted, he would have to become a man. At first, Henrik found it difficult to find work in the countryside since he did not have papers to prove his ancestry. Even though he was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy, farmers were afraid to accidentally hire a Jew. The consequences were too great. Being associated with a Jew meant death, and turning someone in for harboring a Jew meant extra rations for the desperate Polish people. After being turned away from so many doors, and with cold weather settling in, Henrik's desperation for food drove him to raid a pig trough. Finally, however, he came to a large farm that had been confiscated from Polish farmers by the Nazis. But when Henrik knocked on the door, the man who answered almost made him jump out of his skin. With a Hitler-styled patch mustache, the farmer bore a momentary similarity to Adolf Hitler. Soon, Henrik found out that the man was a rabid Nazi sympathizer. Luckily for Henrik, this man was also confident enough in Henrik's Aryan appearance that he not only hired him, but also got him Polish documentation papers. Now Henrik had some stability in his life. He had regular meals, a barn to sleep in, and worked every day herding cows for the farmer. But new dangers soon presented themselves to Henrik. The farmer he worked for was not only a Nazi, but harbored a deep hatred for Poles, which was made all the worse by his violent temper. The danger in this became apparent when the farmer's 2 brothers and 6 sons were all killed in the war within a short period of time. Since Henrik had never told the farmer that he understood German from the orphanage's schooling, the farmer freely ranted in German. One night he said something that sent a shiver down Henrik's spine. Though it made no rational sense, he believed that because the Russians had killed his relatives in the war, he had a right to kill his Polish herding boy. Henrik wanted to flee the house right then, but his well-honed survival instincts kicked in. Instead of running, he finished his dinner and headed for bed. He recalled in later years that as he left, the farmer actually spoke kind words to him and said he would give him a day off tomorrow. Henrik wasn't waiting to see what kind of day off it would be. After gathering all of his belongings, raiding the meat house and chicken coop, he trotted into the snowy night. Henrik spent the rest of the winter hiding in the countryside. When the spring of 1943 came, 13-year-old Henrik headed back for the city of Lodz. But as he walked on the road, a boy fell into step with him. A boy who was so apparently Jewish that he startled Henrik. The boy was Saul Blum, and he had recently escaped a ghetto, but didn't know where to go. As Henrik heard his story, he took note of Saul's malnutrition and decided he would need a good teacher in the art of street savvy. After confiding in Saul that he too was a Jew, the boys stuck together, raiding for food and enjoying each other's company. However, a few weeks later, a homesick Saul expressed his desire to return to the ghetto he came from. Though Henrik tried to convince him that it was a crazy idea, Saul was too homesick for his parents. Together, he and Henrik made their way back to the city. But as they went into the city, Saul wanted to steal some money from a shopkeeper to give to his parents. Henrik didn't like the idea, but Saul was insistent that the shopkeeper would be too slow to catch him. At dusk, they went into the market. Henrik watched from a safe distance as Saul went into a shopkeeper's store and went straight for the cash box. He grabbed 2 fistfuls of coins, and when he did, the chaos exploded all at once. The shopkeeper shouted and Saul ran. He ran outside and right into 2 German police officers. Henrik could only watch in horror as the Germans identified Saul's obvious Jewish features. He recalled one saying, "We know what to do with Jews." Then the officer did something Henrik never forgot. He picked Saul up by the throat and held him eye level until his face swelled and the coins in his hands clattered to the ground. Henrik was completely helpless and ran from the scene so that he did not have to watch the fate of his friend. In addition to losing Saul, Henrik would shortly afterwards go to the Warsaw Ghetto, where he arrived in time to watch the ghetto being swallowed by tall flames as the Germans liquidated the Jewish population within. Now, Henrik knew he truly had no one in the world. For the last 2 years of the war, Henrik scrimped and scavenged to survive, and was even temporarily part of the Polish resistance. All the while, he monitored the Russian and Allied advancements. Finally, the day came when the Nazis fell, and like a breath of fresh air, 15-year-old Henrik realized that being a Jew was no longer a crime punishable by death. Along with a weary remnant of Jews, he drifted out of hiding. However, he now had nowhere to go. He returned to Warsaw, but his home was gone. The people he did recognize were different, scarred by war, and the war had permanently transformed his homeland. He spent days at the Red Cross offices, listening with other Jewish survivors for the names of any of his loved ones to be called out over the intercom. It never came. Now, with a maturity that the lashings of war and the atrocities of the Nazis had brought, Henrik was very much a man with no home or family. Though the horrible acts of the Nazis on the Jews had been revealed to the world, countries did not want to take in the homeless survivors. Henrik, along with many destitute and abandoned Jews, turned his head toward the shores of a tiny patch of desert in the Middle East. It was a violent place, already steeped in conflict, but the Jews by this time were no strangers to conflict. Along with many of his people, Henrik began his journey to Israel, with the hope of finding a place where he could have a home and belong as a Jew. I hope you liked that video. If you did, you know the drill. Please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and leave us a comment to let us know if you liked this, if you didn't like it, what you thought about it, and we will see you in our next video.